What has most affected change in my life? It hasn't been the knowledge I've learned, and it hasn't even been the skills I've been shown. It's been the relationships of people with me, walking in my life with me. Truly, it's the relationships that change us. And so true discipleship is relational. God, even in the incarnation, didn't choose to just give us truth. He gave us himself. And so when I think about whether I'm affecting change in the discipleship of another person or the men that have discipled me, I think of who has given me their life and who has had a relationship with me. Which then begs another question. Are we equipped and do we know how to have relationships? Do we know how to talk about what's inside us? Do we know how to share our hearts with each other? Or do we just know how to trade facts and information about God and how to go live this different and do this differently? One of the things that most concerns me is a view of discipleship that becomes the transmission of information and basic skills. Honestly, that can produce a Pharisee. That can produce a person who on the outside looks like they're doing all the right things, but on the inside, it's just not working. And I would say that I'll speak to men, there are a lot of men in the church today that are having to fake it because they've got all the things around them that look like I'm supposed to be experiencing this with God, but quite frankly, what they're experiencing is shredded wheat with no milk. That they're doing all the right things. They've been told that if they'd love God more, they'd have more. If they'd obey God more, they'd have more. If they would sacrifice more for God, they'd have more. If they'll commit to this program, they'll get more. When I say have more, get more, I'm talking about intimacy with God and intimacy in relationships, because ultimately the human food of life is relationships. That's how we're made in the image of God in that way, that we live in the context of intimate relationships. And so when I'm only transmitting information and I'm only transmitting skill, I'm not giving anyone, or I'm not even experiencing the basic food of life and spiritual life. So I think a lot of men are having to fake it in the church because they're getting all these things, but it still doesn't feel like living. It just doesn't feel like living. And so they walk in and they can't even tell the truth about their life. And so they're sitting in church and they're trying to, love God more. Like, come on. They go, why don't I? And then they shame themselves that they don't. Or they say, gosh, I'm going to give more of my money. I'm going to give more of my time. And then they do. Like, they give like crazy. They sacrifice like crazy. And then they still wonder why it feels empty. Now, it doesn't feel empty all the time. Quite frankly, a non-believer, someone who doesn't follow Christ, it's a proverbial truth that they can give their life away and experience some life. Like when the scripture says more blessed to give than to receive, a non-believer, an unbeliever can experience the blessings of giving to help somebody. And so certainly a believer can. So when they're giving their life away like that, it can feel like living. But ultimately, if it's not relationally based and if it's not intimate with God and with other people in it, that has a shelf life and a life cycle that's going to burn itself out as well. And so I'm 52 years old. I run into a lot of people who, like me, maybe a little bit younger than me especially, who maybe came to know Christ in their teens or in their college years, and they were told that if they would just do these things, if they would follow this track, if they would commit to these kinds of things, if they would make these kinds of decisions, that they were going to wake up in their 40s and 50s and life was going to feel really good to them spiritually. And the truth is they're waking up and they're just tired. They're spiritually tired because they've been working really hard, which in some ways exposes the problem. They've been working really hard, and their doing has preceded their being.